Hey all, this is my introduction and low-level guide to the Warlock. I play on the Korean server, but I've seen many people interested in the Warlock class since it'll be released soon in March for NA. So I'll just give a rough guide, some tips and tricks on how to play Warlock. This is situated for people who don't know much about the class or who want to know low level play. I see a lot of guides, but most of them are out of date or they're max level, so it's hard to know what points are good for leveling and what's the most useful at early level since your gameplay changes with some key skills. So the Warlock is a high burst range class and they're also super squishy. They use the Razor weapon, which you can see here, that they wear on their arm. And like so. And it looks pretty badass, although sometimes it still has a little clipping issues, but not too bad. So here we'll take a look at the abilities of the Warlock, and I'll give you a rough guide on how to spend your early level points. Your first ability is Kindle, which is your basic left mouse button. On the second cast it becomes Ignite, and on the third it becomes Mantra. Mantra is super important because it refunds 3 chi and it gives you a 5-second buff that refunds 5 chi over the 5 seconds. But it has a 9-second cooldown, so you don't want to use it more often than that, or you don't get the buff and it's wasted. Your main skill is Dimensional Bullet. It's got 0.7 cast and costs 3 chi, so it's quite expensive. Although, when a target is marked, which we'll talk about soon, Dimensional Bullet becomes instant cast. How you get the free instant cast and get a mark is when Dimensional Bullet crits, it opens up Rupture over here. So Rupture is your primary skill while leveling, as it does really good damage. It marks the target for free instant cast Dimensional Bullets, and it also refunds a lot of chi. So at the first point, it's just 3 chi. It bypasses defense, and it also reduces the cooldown of your Raging Spirit by 1 second. Second point, it increases the chi refund to 6, and if you crit, it refunds 6 chi over 2 seconds. And the last one, it reduces Raging Spirit by 3 seconds. If you crit, it heals you for 25% of the damage and increases the mark from 0.8 to 1.2 seconds. So what you want to do is cast Dimensional Bullet. When it crits, hit Rupture. This will do a lot of damage, put the mark on the target, which gives you instant cast Dimensional Bullet, and also refunds chi. So these synergize very well, and this is your main source of damage for like 1v1 mobs and pulling, a few at a time. Your main AoE damage is going to be these two. Raging Spirit is your biggest damage spell at 5 meters. It is a 2.5 second cast with an 18-second cooldown. However, this can be instant cast when you use it with Opening Gate. Opening Gate is a channel as well, but it does ticking damage. And on the last tick of damage, it procs a free Raging Spirit. And this also has a 30-second cooldown. Raging Spirit also applies the mark that does free Dimensional Bullet too. So if you're doing boss mobs, this is really useful, but if it's not a boss, this combo will pretty much kill everything, so you usually don't have to worry about it. Magical Barrier or Spiritual Barrier, I think it's called Bounded Field on BNS Tree, is a snare. It just roots the target in place. And this is your setup, so you want to snare them with this, then cast the channel. When that's done, you get the free Raging Spirit proc, and that's your wombo combo right there. For defense, you're going to use Warding Charm. It's got a 1-second cooldown and lasts 1.5 seconds, so you can pretty much spam this. On a successful block, it refunds 1 chi, and it opens up 2 possibilities. You can use Mantra and get your refunded chi and the buff, or you can use Quell, which also refunds 3 mana and knocks the target back. So if you're against melee people that jump in your face, use Quell to knock them back. If they're ranged and the Quell won't hit them, use Mantra. And that's pretty much your defensive combo. Also, you have your Summon Familiar, which everybody likes because he looks badass and he does a ton of damage, but it's on a 45-second cooldown and it's 0.8 seconds to cast. So usually you want to use this if there's a lot of AoE mobs or boss mobs, world boss, anything like this. But for just questing one by one, you usually don't use them too often. So I don't recommend putting too many points here at the early levels. When you do summon your familiar, you unlock these abilities on the right side right here. For more defensive, you have Protection Charm. This negates any one attack in the next 5 seconds. And you have Circle of Purification, which prevents knockdown in the next 6 seconds. Your own knockdown here is Border Slash. It knocks him down for 2 seconds. And you can also spec some of these for brands, but we're not going to talk about brands as they interact with other abilities. Warlock is pretty unique that it gets all of its major abilities by level 30. Ravage you get last, and you get Spirit Surge at 24. So levels 24 and level 30, the Warlock changes quite a bit. So this build is pre-level 24. So it's just your early, first level before you get to Crimson Badlands area. So I recommend putting 2 points in Raging Spirit, as this reduces the chi cost from 3 to 1, and this increases the mark from 2 to 4. So if you're on boss mobs and they don't die with this combo, you get 4 seconds of free dimensional bullets, which is pretty amazing. I put 1 point in the chains just to increase the area to 5, which is the same area as Raging Spirit, so you can shackle more things in a larger area if mobs are spread up. This one is optional, and you can actually spec this a different way if you want. Mantra point here is to bypass Deflect, because if this doesn't hit the target, you don't get the buff. So it's pretty important this hits, because it's a big source of your chi regeneration. So I do recommend just putting 1 point in here for right now. And that's all the points I have so far, but that's a good way to spec just for some good damage. And now I'll just show you some of the abilities and how they work. So I know I have a melee guy here, so I'm just going to left mouse button. I'm going to block because he's going to jump, spell to knock him away. Dimensional bullet, procs a rupture, dead. Quite simple. This guy is ranged, so I'm just going to show here, block, and now I get a free mantra, and you can see on the left side. See, my quell is too far away from him, so that's why you want to use mantra on ranged people. I can show you the shackle and the opening gate. So there's shackle, opening gate, you see the ticking damage, and that procs the free Raging Spirit, but he died so quick so you can't see. So I'll show you just the casted Raging Spirit, and you can kind of see the difference. Bam! 1100 damage, which I think they only have like 800, so it is pretty much a one-hit kill for anything around here. But your general combo is right until you crit, proc, and they're dead. If they do live, they have the mark on them, which you get the instant cast dimensional bullets, and you pretty much blast through every single thing that is nearby. So now I'll show you some of the defensive abilities. I'll show you Protection Charm first. Bam, it gives you an iframe. Border Slash is the knockdown. And I'll show you Circle Protection. Although it only prevents knockdown, so actually I'll just show you what it looks like. It just lays a barrier on the ground, so while this is active, you cannot be knocked down. And finally, I'll show you the familiar. And doesn't he look badass? So down here in the bottom, you can see I've moved his UI down here, but he lasts 24 seconds. He's got quite a bit of health, only about 250 less than I do. And that is pretty much it for all of the skills. Oh, there's the instant cast. And if you see above his head, he kind of had a little reticle. That is the mark. There's also a branded mark, but that will come later when you get some other skills. And the rupture also procs demon orbs on a crit, I believe. And it'll be like this little blue orb that swirls you. I'll make another video a little bit later when I'm higher level and show you that after post 24 level. And I'll show you how those work. But basically every demon orb, you can have up to 3, I think. And every one you spend when you do Raging Spirit reduces the cooldown. So that becomes a pretty important part later on, especially in dungeons. You want as many Raging Spirits as possible. So, I hope you liked the introduction and guide. If you have any comments, critiques, or anything, just feel free to leave a comment or send me a message. Thanks a lot.